Hello everyone, this is Refresh and I am here to take a look at the Ral Planeswalker deck from Magic the Gathering Guilds of Ravnica. This is for Ral Caller of Storms, as you can see on the front here, and if we look at the back, it says Ral Zarek is a quick-witted storm mage who is always one step ahead of his enemies. Disrupt your opponent's plans and pummel them with a flurry of spells on your way to victory. The contents include a deck box, a 60-card deck, and it says play tabletop or online, so it says that there is a code to unlock the deck in Magic the Gathering Arena. That's kind of nice. It contains two 15-card booster packs, a strategy insert, and 2 reference cards. So let's take a look at what's inside. Here is our foil Ral Zarek Planeswalker card. It's just a little bit bent from having sat inside that plastic display case. And his abilities are +1 draw card, -2 Ral Caller of Storms deals 3 damage divided as you choose amongst 1, 2, or 3 targets, and -7 draw 7 cards, Ral Caller of Storms deals 7 damage to each creature your opponents control. Wow, that's a pretty tough ender there. Then we have our deck box, which is bright red all around with a little bit of blue hints on it, and that is a little bit of change of pace from what these boxes used to look like with black on the sides. And so that's kind of interesting. With some nice artwork of Ral over there. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's inside. Alright, here are our 2 packs of Guilds of Ravnica. Just a little bit squished, as they usually are, from inside of the box. We have our deck here, and we have a hey before you play note. It says, hey before you play, this 60-card deck is ready for battle. So don't start adding new cards just yet. Play a few games to understand how your deck works, then open the included booster packs. The layout of this appears to have changed a little. It says right here, playing the deck, Ral never lets his enemies know what he's planning. He waits for them to make the first move before he strikes. Cast your burn and bounce spells at opportune moments to kill or neutralize your opponent's most important creatures and leave them scrambling to recover. Press your advantage by drawing cards and replaying crucial spells from your graveyard until you see your chance to strike for the win. That sounds a bit like a control deck, but it's really weird that an intro-oriented product will actually use terms like burn and bounce when it's not really clear what that means, and the average player might not fully understand how to read and grok what this strategy is supposed to be. It also, like a lot of these strategy guides, is a little bit thin on what you're actually supposed to do and what cards are supposed to be doing them, but that's par for the course at this point. It's hard to ask for more. Ral Zarek has a little bit of information for his story here for Caller of Storms, and it's a little bit more than they used to put on, so I'm grateful that we now know a little bit more about what his story is. But again, it's pretty light on the story, especially compared to the earlier Planeswalker deck strategy guides and story bits. The terms to know tells you how all of these special abilities work, and this is clearly a jumpstart deck. But these are things that you're also going to find on cards, so I'd rather this space have been used to, I don't know, have a deck list and more information about what you're supposed to be doing with the actual cards in the deck. Then there's some ads on the bottom. On the back, they actually tell you what Planeswalkers are and how they work, and this is a massive improvement from the previous iterations of these strategy inserts, because they just gave you an URL which you had to painstakingly type into your browser, and so I'm very glad that they did this. And then finally there is a little bit of information on the Magic the Gathering portal, which I believe doesn't actually exist yet, and so this is kind of a weird ad to have. Now let's take a look at the actual deck. Alright, our rare for this deck is an Erratic Cyclops, and it is a payoff for casting instants and sorceries, especially instants and sorceries with high converted mana cost, because the Erratic Cyclops will gain its power equivalent to whatever that spell you cast is. We also have an Omnispell Adept as the second rare, and its ability is 2 and blue tap. You may cast an instant or sorcery card from your hand without paying its mana cost, letting you cheat out some pretty expensive instants and sorceries for only 3 mana. Let's hope that there are some good payoffs for that in here. Ral's Dispersal is the exclusive tutor card for the Planeswalkers deck, and it says return target creature to its owner's hand. You may search your library and or graveyard for a card named Ral Caller of Storms, reveal it, and put it in your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. So it looks like the search replacement cards from Core Set 2019 were just for the Core Set 2019, and we're back to the tutor cards for your Planeswalker in the Guilds of Ravnica Planeswalker decks. And I'm glad for that. I think these are a little bit better. It makes the Planeswalker decks feel more Planeswalker-y. And this is a bounce effect that also searches you up your Ral Zarek to call next. And so that's not bad either, although it is a bit on the expensive side at 5 mana for what's essentially a unsummon. Ral Staticaster appears to be the uncommon for this deck, and it is a 4 mana 3/3 Vishnu Wizard with Trample, and it says whenever Ral Staticaster attacks, if you control a Ral Planeswalker, it gets +1/+0 for each card in your hand until end of turn. So it makes this a potential damage beast if you have a lot of cards in your hand. Let's hope that there are enough cards in this deck to power that. Precision Bolt appears to be Ral's common that is exclusive to this deck, and it's nice in the fact that it is a direct damage spell that can target anything. It does cost 3 mana, making it worse than Lightning Bolt, and it is sorcery speed, so you can't just play it on your opponent's turn or in response to anything. But there's no more appropriate card for a Caller of Storms like Ral Zarek, and so you definitely wanted to have this kind of burn in the deck. Last card here is the arena code to bring this deck into the arena. It's definitely nice that Wizards of the Coast started adding the arena codes into this so that you can have the deck in both digital and on paper. In addition, there are these 2 tip cards, and it looks like this replaces what used to be the reference guide, but a lot of the same information is here: how to cast spells, a little bit about the phases and turns, and then more about attacking and blocking, which is kind of nice, and then a link that you have to type into your browser to learnmagic.wizards.com. The fact that these are little cards, I guess, are nice because you can just keep them with your deck instead of having some folded piece of paper that you have to open up. But this is, again, not enough information for you to learn how to play. Hopefully there's enough at this learnmagic.wizards.com to get there. So that looks to be the deck. It does appear to be a bit of a spell slinger style deck, and we will see how well it plays. So we got to play with this deck a little, and I would have to say it's a pretty fun deck. One of the reasons why it's so enjoyable is because of the amount of interaction it offers, with so much in the way of direct damage, all the way from direct current, the 4 precision bolts, the command the storm, as well as bounce in the Ral's dispersal, and interaction as well in the Sonic Assault, which also doubles as damage. Ral himself can fire off damage, and the Hellkite Whelps even can throw a little damage at your opponent's creatures as well. And that makes this deck good at dealing with your opponent's creatures while also pushing forward its own game plan, because you can also send the direct current and precision bolts at your opponent's face as well. The deck does reward the casting of spells as well, with the Fire Churns, the Goblin Electromancer, the Wee Dragonauts, the Leapfrog, the Erratic Cyclops, and then it has some additional synergies with the Omnispell Adept, letting you recast those spells. And the Jumpstart mechanic works wonderfully with this as a deck because it lets you cast additional spells out of your graveyard, turning those useless lands or late game creatures that lose value very quickly, like the Vidalcan Mesmerist, into additional casts of the spell. I do have some minor criticisms for this deck, which is otherwise pretty fun. One thing that I find very odd is the inclusion of 3 Fearless Halberdiers, because I think that would suggest to a player that's picking up this deck that you want more Fearless Halberdiers, when actually they don't play towards this deck's game plan very well, and I'd rather have more Leapfrogs. And I would have probably split the difference between the Leapfrogs and the Fearless Halberdiers between 2 and 2 to help signal to a player that, yeah, the Fearless Halberdiers are alright filler, but you want more Leapfrogs because when you cast those spells, your Leapfrogs are flying and then they can get through and deal more damage to your opponent. I appreciate the presence of even random cards like the Passwall Adept, which lets your powered up creatures get through for damage on turns that they might not normally. Cards that I think that don't really serve this deck's purpose, in addition to the Fearless Halberdier, is probably the Vidalcan Mesmerist, which is a very aggressive blue card, and I don't think it's only really good if you are turning sideways very frequently with multiples of them, because it blanks your opponent's the capacity to favorably block. And then the Muse Drake, which doesn't really serve any particular purpose either, besides just being a body, I guess, that can defend. Ral himself feeds this deck very well because his +1 is just generically good, drawing a card is always good, and then he can deal additional damage to any number of targets, and so that lets you direct damage to the face if you need to finish them off. It lets you direct a certain number of damage to one of the blocking creatures so that you can finish it off with a precision bolt or a direct current or a command storm. And so Ral works really well, and of course if you ultimate him, then it's almost certain to be game over to your opponent because you're going to wipe out your opponent's board. Like every single Planeswalker deck I've looked at, there are too many lands. There are 26 lands here with 12 mountains, 10 islands, and 4 Guild Gates. I think the Guild Gates might be pushed a little bit too much, but I think that's fine because it does help fix your mana. The overabundance of lands, though, is going to be a killer for this deck. Fortunately, this deck can actually make up for it to some extent by using those extra lands to discard with Jumpstart, but you really only need 24 in a deck like this, and so it's a little mind-boggling that they keep putting way more lands than is required for a deck. And I think that's a poor way to instruct players on what you actually want in a deck. I think these Planeswalker decks as beginner products should come with the right number of lands. You can have some weaker cards here to help give players a place to improve the deck, but the land thing is just incomprehensible why they would do that. So this is a fun deck. This is the first true Spellslinger deck amongst all the Planeswalker decks, and so if that's what you're looking for, then I would highly recommend picking up this Planeswalker deck unless there have been newer, more interesting Spellslinger decks since. And that would make this a particularly good choice for a Planeswalker deck if you were looking to pick one up where you really like to cast spells that directly damage creatures and your opponent and get some sort of benefit off of it. Let me know what your thoughts were about this deck in the comments below. If this video was helpful to you, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more such videos, hit subscribe. This was Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.